The stars had never seemed so cold to Admiral Catherine Moore as they did on that morning. She stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic cruiser Endurance, watching the distant glow of Helios colony through the viewport. Somewhere down there, 42,000 human beings were starving. Trapped behind a blockade that had lasted for 11 months, Catherine was 53 years old, with gray streaking through her dark hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. She had served in the diplomatic corps for 26 years, ever since humanity first joined the Galactic Concord. In that time, she had negotiated treaties with 17 different species, resolved border disputes that had threatened war, and earned a reputation as someone who could find common ground where none seemed to exist. But the Draxians were different. She turned away from the viewport as Lieutenant Commander Daniel Perry entered the observation deck. He was a young man, barely 30, with the kind of optimism that Catherine had once possessed. He carried a data tablet, and his face told her everything she needed to know before he spoke. "They rejected the proposal," Daniel said quietly. "All of it. High Commander Kethrel said our offer was an insult to Draxian honor." Catherine closed her eyes. The proposal had been generous beyond reason. She had offered to relocate to smaller human colonies, surrender mining rights to 3 asteroid belts, and pay a tribute that would have strained Earth's economy for a decade. She had done this because she believed peace was worth any price. "What does he want now?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. "Complete withdrawal from the entire Orion Spur. Dismantling of all defense. Platforms within 50 light-years of Draxian space. And he wants the Helios colonists to remain as laborers in Draxian territory." "Slaves," Catherine said flatly. "He wants them as slaves, yes, Admiral." She walked to her desk and sat down heavily. Through the viewport, she could see the distant shapes of Draxian warships, their angular hulls bristling with weapons. There were 60 of them surrounding Helios colony. More than enough to destroy any rescue attempt. The Draxians were a reptilian species, cold-blooded in more ways than one. They had built their empire through conquest and maintained it through fear. Their society was divided into rigid castes, with warriors at the top and everyone else existing to serve them. They viewed other species as either threats to be destroyed or resources to be exploited. When humanity had first expanded into the Orion Spur, the Draxians had watched with growing anger. These soft, warm-blooded creatures were spreading into space that the hegemony had marked for future conquest. It did not matter that the systems humanity colonized were unclaimed. The Draxians had intended to take them eventually, and that was enough. Catherine had been negotiating with them for 18 months. She had smiled when they insulted her. She had remained calm when they threatened her. She had made concession after concession, always believing that eventually they would find a compromise that both sides could accept. Her console beeped with an incoming transmission. She activated it and found herself looking at the scarred face of High Commander Kethrel. His scales were dark green, almost black, and a long scar ran from above his left eye, down to his jaw. His eyes were yellow with vertical slits, and they regarded her with open contempt. "Human," he said, his voice translated by the ship's computer into flat, emotionless English. "I have grown tired of your weakness. Your endless talking and begging disgusts me. My people begin to wonder if humans are even worth conquering or if you should simply be exterminated as vermin." Catherine kept her expression neutral. "High Commander, I believe we can still find a solution that benefits both our peoples." "If you would consider silence," Kethrel interrupted. "I did not contact you to hear more of your pathetic bleating. I contacted you to show you something, to help you understand that the time for talking has ended." The screen split, showing a view of what appeared to be a public square on one of the Helios colony settlements. Human colonists had been gathered there, surrounded by Draxian soldiers. They looked thin and afraid, their clothes hanging loose on bodies that had not eaten properly in months. A Draxian officer walked among them, selecting people and pulling them forward. Catherine watched as 47 colonists were lined up against a wall. Men and women, young and old. A teenage girl who could not have been more than 16. "This is what happens to species that waste Draxian time," Kethrel said. "Watch carefully, human. Learn what your weakness has cost your people. The Draxian soldiers raised their weapons. Catherine gripped the edge of her desk so hard her knuckles turned white. "Stop this, please. Whatever you want, we can discuss it." "There is no need for the soldiers fired." 47 people fell. The teenage girl was among the last, her body crumpling to the ground beside an older woman, who might have been her mother. Cathrell's face filled the screen again. "I will do this every day until you accept my terms completely, or until there are no more humans left to kill. The choice is yours." The transmission ended. Catherine sat in silence for a long moment. Daniel stood frozen by the door, his face pale with horror. Through the viewport, Draxian ships continued their patrol as if nothing had happened. Something changed in Catherine at that moment. Something that had been holding her back, keeping her committed to peace at any cost, simply broke. She thought about all the times she had smiled at Draxian insults, all the concessions she had made, all the dignity she had surrendered in the name of diplomacy, and she thought about that teenage girl, falling dead in a dusty square, killed for no reason except that humanity had dared to exist in space. The Draxians wanted. She removed the diplomatic credentials from around her neck and placed them carefully on her desk. They were a symbol of everything she had believed in, everything she had dedicated her life to. Now they felt like chains. "Daniel," she said quietly, "open a secure channel to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Admiral." His voice trembled slightly. "Do it." He moved to the communications console and worked the controls. After a moment, he nodded. "Channel open. It is Secretary Cole." Catherine stood and faced the screen where Marcus Cole's face had appeared. He was an older man with a grave expression, and his eyes told her that he had already seen the transmission from Cathrell. "Catherine," he said, "I saw what happened. The entire council saw it. Then you know why I'm calling?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Are you certain? There is no going back from this." Catherine looked out at the stars one more time. She thought about the colonists who were still alive, still waiting for rescue that diplomatic means would never bring. She thought about every other human colony that might one day face the same fate if the galaxy believed humanity could be pushed around without consequence. "Diplomacy has failed," she said. "Authorize Prometheus." Marcus closed his eyes briefly, then nodded. Authorization confirmed. "God help us all." The channel closed. Catherine turned to Daniel, who was staring at her with a mixture of fear and something that might have been hope. "What is Prometheus?" he asked. Catherine looked out at the Draxian fleet. Those 60 warships that represented the hegemony's power and arrogance. In a few days, they would learn that they had made a terrible mistake. They would learn that humanity's patience was not weakness, and that their mercy had been a choice, not an inability. "Prometheus," she said softly, "is what happens when we stop being diplomats." She turned away from the viewport. There was work to do, and the galaxy would never be the same. Secretary of Defense. Marcus Cole sat alone in his office, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of orange and gold, but he did not notice the beauty. His mind was on the message he had just received from Admiral Catherine Moore. Authorize Prometheus. For 30 years, Marcus had known this day might come. He had hoped it never would. Every Secretary of Defense before him had hoped the same thing. But they had all prepared for it anyway, because humanity had learned long ago that hoping for peace was not the same as guaranteeing it. He picked up his secure communicator and began making calls. Within 2 hours, the Joint Chiefs of Staff had assembled in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. Within 4 hours, the United Earth Council had convened an emergency session. The debate was short. Everyone had seen the footage of the executions. Everyone understood what it meant. The vote was unanimous, 6,000 kilometers away. Deep beneath the surface of the moon, Director Sarah Mitchell received the activation code. She was a small woman with silver hair and calm eyes that had seen many things in her 60 years of life. She had spent the last 20 of those years overseeing humanity's greatest secret. Sarah walked through corridors carved from lunar rock, past security checkpoints staffed by soldiers who had sworn oaths of absolute secrecy. She reached a massive blast door and placed her hand on the scanner. The door opened, revealing a control room filled with screens and consoles that had waited dormant for decades. "Begin activation sequence," she said to her staff. "Wake up, Prometheus." Across the solar system, things began to move. In the asteroid belt, massive doors slid open on rocks that had seemed like ordinary space debris. Ships emerged from hidden shipyards, their hulls black as the void between stars. They were like anything the Galactic Concord had ever seen from humanity. The patrol vessels and cargo ships that human space was known for were small, modest things designed to avoid attention. These new ships were something else entirely. The largest of them were 2 kilometers long. Bristling with weapon systems that used principles of physics the galaxy had not yet discovered. Their engines could push them through faster than light travel at speeds 12 times greater than any known vessel. Their armor was made of materials that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Substances that humanity had created through decades of secret research. There were 3,000 of these ships. They had been built over 40 years, hidden in plain sight among the asteroid mining operations that humanity used as cover. Every worker in those facilities had been carefully selected, sworn to secrecy. And given the knowledge that they were protecting their species, Sir Valbel Catherine Moore received word that the Prometheus fleet was assembling at a staging point behind Jupiter. She transferred her flag from the diplomatic cruiser to the Vanguard, a dreadnought-class vessel that dwarfed anything she had ever commanded. As she walked through its corridors, she felt the power humming through its systems. This ship had been built for one purpose: to end wars quickly and completely. Her new crew was waiting for her on the bridge. These were not diplomats or negotiators. They were warriors, trained in combat doctrines that humanity had developed over centuries of fighting each other. They had studied every conflict in human history, from ancient battles fought with swords and spears to the terrible wars of the 21st century that had nearly destroyed Earth. Daniel Perry had transferred with her. He stood beside her command chair, still trying to process everything he had learned in the past few hours. "I do not understand," he said quietly. "How did we hide all of this?" "The Concorde monitors our space. They would have detected construction on this scale." Catherine smiled slightly. "We let them see what we wanted them to see. Every time they scanned our asteroid mining operations, they saw exactly what we designed those facilities to show. The real work happened deeper, in places their sensors could not reach." "But why?" "We joined the Concorde in good faith. We were committed to peaceful cooperation." "We were committed to survival," Catherine corrected him. "When we made first contact with the Vethkai 60 years ago, we were excited. We thought we had found friends among the stars. But the more we learned about the galaxy, the more we realized the truth. The strong prey on the weak. Empires rise by conquest and fall by conquest. Peace is just the time between wars." She gestured at the view screen which showed the fleet assembling around them. Hundreds of ships, then thousands, their running lights creating a constellation of human determination. "Our leaders decided that we would try diplomacy first. We would smile and negotiate and make friends wherever we could. But we would also prepare for the day when diplomacy failed. Because if that day came and we were not ready, our species would be enslaved or exterminated like so many others." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "The Draxians have 800 warships. We have 3,000. We outnumber them almost 4-1. "Numbers are not the only advantage," Catherine said. "Our ships are faster. Our weapons are more powerful. Our tactics are based on thousands of years of human warfare, refined and perfected. The Draxians have been the strongest power in their region for so long that they have forgotten what it means to fight an equal opponent." She stood and addressed the entire bridge crew. "In a few hours we will jump to the Helios system. We will destroy the Draxian blockade, rescue our people, and send a message to the galaxy that humanity is not to be victimized. I will not lie to you and say this will be easy. People will die. Some of them may be people in this room." Her voice hardened. "But I want you to remember something. For 60 years, we have been mocked as weak. We have been dismissed as prey. We have watched other species suffer under Draxian rule, because we were not strong enough to stop it. Today, that ends. Today the galaxy learns who we really are." She paused, looking at each face in turn. "We are humanity. We are the children of a world that has known more war than any species in the Concord can imagine. We carry that inheritance in our blood, in our bones, in every cell of our bodies. And when we are pushed to the breaking point, we become something that the galaxy has never seen." The crew responded with grim determination. These were people who understood what was at stake. Not just the lives of the Helios colonists, but the future of their entire species. Catherine sat back in her command chair. Navigation, plot a course for the Helios system. Communications, signal the fleet to prepare for faster-than-light jump. All ships. Condition 1. The Vanguard's engines hummed as they powered up to full capacity. Around them, 3,000 other ships did the same. The fleet arranged itself into battle formation, wall of human steel and human resolve. Catherine thought about the teenage girl she had watched die. She thought about all the other colonists who were still waiting, still hoping for rescue. She thought about every species in the galaxy that had suffered under Draxian rule because no one was strong enough to stop them. "Jump," she ordered. Space twisted around the fleet as they entered faster-than-light travel. The stars stretched into lines of light, and then they were gone, hurtling toward a confrontation that would change everything. Behind them, Earth continued to turn beneath its blanket of clouds. Its people went about their daily lives, most of them unaware of what was happening among the stars. They did not know that their species had just awakened from its long diplomatic sleep. They did not know that the galaxy was about to learn why humanity had chosen peace, not because they could not make war, but because they remembered too well what happened when they did, and the Draxians were about to receive that lesson firsthand. "High Commander." Kethrall stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominance, watching the Helios colony turn slowly beneath him. It had been a good day. The execution of those humans had been broadcast across Draxian space, and the response from his people had been enthusiastic. They were proud of their High Commander for showing these soft creatures their proper place. His second in command, a younger officer named Vrathsel, approached with a report. "The human diplomatic vessel has withdrawn to the edge of the system, High Commander. They have made no further attempts at communication." Kethrall made a sound of contempt. "Of course they have not. They are cowards. They will accept our terms now, or we will kill more of their vermin until they do." He turned to look at his fleet arrayed around him. 60 warships, each one a product of Draxian military superiority. They had conquered 37 species with ships like these. The humans had nothing that could challenge them. "High Commander," the sensor officer called out, his voice suddenly uncertain. "I am detecting unusual readings at the edge of the system. Multiple faster-than-light signatures incoming." Kethrall walked to the sensor display. "The human relief fleet, no doubt. How many ships?" The sensor officer stared at his screen for a long moment. His scales had turned pale, a sign of extreme stress in Draxian physiology. "I am having difficulty counting them. High Commander, the energy signatures are very large, much larger than anything in our records for human vessels." "Give me a number," Kethrall demanded. Before the officer could answer, space at the edge of the system began to twist and tear. Points of light appeared, growing brighter and brighter until they hurt to look at. Then, like water bursting through a dam, ships began to emerge. They came in waves. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. Ships larger than anything Kethrall had ever seen, their black hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They moved with a speed and precision that seemed impossible. Forming into battle lines with mechanical perfection, the sensor officer's voice was barely a whisper. 3,000 ships, High Commander. Approximately 3,000 human warships. Kethrall felt something he had not experienced in many years. He felt fear. But he was a Draxian warrior, and he refused to show weakness before his crew. "They are bluffing," he said, forcing confidence into his voice. "These must be cargo ships, civilian vessels modified to appear threatening. The humans do not have warships like this. Everyone knows they are too weak to fight. A transmission came through on all frequencies. The face that appeared was human, a female with gray in her hair and cold eyes that held no trace of the submission Cathrell had seen in previous negotiations. "Hi, Commander Cathrell," she said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "I am Admiral Catherine Moore of the United Earth Navy. You have 47 deaths to answer for. You have 11 months of starvation and suffering to answer for. You have 6 decades of arrogance to answer for." Cathrell bared his teeth. "You dare threaten me, human? You come to my space with your pathetic display and think you can frighten the Draxian hegemony? I am not here to threaten you," Catherine replied. "Threats are for diplomats. I am here to educate you." She ended the transmission. Cathrell turned to his tactical officer. "All ships, attack formation. Destroy these pretenders." The Draxian fleet moved forward, their weapons charging. They had fought many enemies before. They had never lost. There was no reason to believe today would be different. The human fleet did not move. They simply waited as the Draxians closed the distance. Their formations solid and unafraid. At optimal weapons range, Cathrell gave the order to fire. 60 Draxian warships unleashed their full arsenals. Plasma beams, missile swarms, and kinetic rounds streaked across space toward the human line. It was enough firepower to crack a small moon. It should have torn through any fleet in the galaxy. The human ships did not even bother to dodge. The weapons struck their shields and simply stopped. Not deflected. Not absorbed. Stopped. As if the energy had been frozen in time and then erased from existence. The human shields glowed briefly, then returned to their normal state as if nothing had happened. Cathrell stared in disbelief. "That is impossible." Fire again. All weapons. Continuous fire. The Draxian fleet poured everything they had into the attack. The space between the two fleets became a storm of destructive energy, and the human ships continued to advance, untouched, their shields swallowing everything the Draxians could throw at them. Then the humans fired back. The first volley came from weapons that the Draxians had no name for, beams of twisted gravity that caught warships and crushed them like aluminum cans. Torpedoes that did not explode but instead caused ships to simply cease existing. Their matter scattered across dimensions that the Draxians did not know existed. Kinetic rounds moving at fractions of light speed that punched through armor as if it were paper. The Draxian flagship shuddered as a ship to their starboard simply vanished, replaced by an expanding cloud of particles. "Evasive maneuvers," Cathrell shouted. "All ships, evasive maneuvers." But the human ships were faster. Every time a Draxian vessel tried to change course, human ships appeared ahead of them, cutting off escape routes. The battle, if it could be called that, had become a hunt. Captain Lisa Morgan commanded the destroyer Swift Justice from the front lines. Her ship was small compared to the dreadnoughts, but it was fast and lethal. She guided her squadron through the Draxian formation, their weapons tearing through enemy ships with surgical precision. "Contact the ground forces," she ordered her communications officer. "Tell Colonel Benjamin Torres that we are clearing the orbital space. He can begin the liberation operation." On the surface of Helios Colony, dropships descended through the atmosphere. They carried Marines in powered armor, each suit equipped with weapons and defenses that made the soldiers inside nearly invincible against. Draxian ground forces. Colonel Torres led the assault personally. His troops spread out through the colony, engaging Draxian garrison units and pushing them back. The colonists, who had spent 11 months in captivity, watched in amazement as human soldiers tore through their captors like a storm through dry leaves. In orbit, battle was ending. The Draxian fleet had been reduced from 60 ships to less than 10, and those survivors were desperately trying to flee. But there was nowhere to run. Human ships blocked every escape route, their weapons tracking the fleeing vessels with patient precision. Cathrell stood on the bridge of the Dominance, surrounded by flames and sparking consoles. Half his crew was dead. His ship was crippled, drifting without power. A human voice came through the emergency channel. It was Admiral Moore. "I, Commander Cathrell. Your fleet is destroyed. Your ground forces are surrendering. You have lost." Kethrel could barely speak through his rage and fear. This is not possible. Humans are weak. Everyone knows humans are weak. Everyone was wrong, Catherine replied. Surrender your vessel, and you will be treated according to the laws of war. Resist, and you will die. The choice is yours. For a long moment, Kethrel considered fighting to the death. It was the Draxian way. But looking around at the destruction of everything he had built, at the complete and total defeat of Draxian military power, something broke inside him. I surrender, he said. Catherine's voice held no triumph, no satisfaction, only a terrible weariness. A wise decision. Prepare to be boarded. The Battle of Helios had lasted 11 minutes from the first shot to the last. 60 Draxian warships destroyed or captured. 0 human vessels lost. On the surface, the colonists emerged from their shelters as the last Draxian soldiers laid down their weapons. They had been starving for nearly a year. They had watched their friends and family die. They had given up hope. Now they looked up at the sky and saw human ships where Draxian ones had been. They saw their rescuers walking among them, offering food and medical care. They saw something they had stopped believing in. They saw that humanity had come for them, and across the galaxy. Every species with access to communications networks watched the footage of the battle with growing horror. The humans, those soft and diplomatic creatures, had revealed themselves to be something else entirely. Something the galaxy was never seen before. Something terrifying. The Grand Assembly of the Galactic Concord met on Nexus Prime. A world that had been neutral territory for over 1,000 years. Representatives from 200 species had gathered in the massive chamber, their forms ranging from insectoid to aquatic to shapes that defied easy description. They came from empires and republics, from ancient civilizations and young spacefaring cultures. They had all come to discuss the same thing: humanity, Ambassador. Christopher Blake walked through the entrance of the Grand Assembly and felt every eye in the chamber turn toward him. He was a tall man in his 50s, with graying temples and a face that had learned to hide its emotions over decades of diplomatic service. He wore simple clothing, nothing that suggested military rank or aggressive intent. He had been chosen for this moment. Precisely because he did not look threatening. Earth's leaders understood that the galaxy was terrified, and they did not want to make that fear worse. The chamber fell silent as he approached the speaker's platform. The silence was heavy with tension and unspoken accusations. Many of the beings watching him had spent their entire lives believing that humanity was a minor species, too peaceful to matter in galactic politics. Now they knew the truth, and they did not know how to process it. The first to speak was Serelfith, the Vethkai ambassador. His species had made first contact with humanity 63 years ago. They were an ancient race, wise and patient, and they had welcomed humans into the Concord as promising newcomers. Ambassador Blake Serelvith said, his translated voice carrying notes of disappointment and confusion, I have known your species since you first reached beyond your home system. I believed you were committed to peace. I believed you were genuine in your diplomatic efforts. Now I learn that you have been hiding a military force capable of destroying any power in this galaxy. I must ask, why did you deceive us? Christopher took a moment before responding. He had prepared for this question, had rehearsed his answer many times. But standing here, facing the accumulated suspicion of the galaxy, he realized that rehearsed words would not be enough. He needed to speak from somewhere deeper. 200 years ago, he began, before my people reached for the stars, we nearly destroyed ourselves. We built weapons capable of cracking planets, and we used them on each other. Cities were turned to ash. Continents were poisoned. Billions of our own kind died because we could not stop fighting. He paused, letting the words sink in. Many species in the chamber had similar histories. War was not unique to humanity. When we finally achieved peace, it was not because we became gentle or enlightened. It was because we had seen what we were capable of. We looked at the ruins of our civilization, at the graves of our dead, and we were horrified. We swore that we would never become those creatures again. Christopher's voice grew stronger. Then we discovered we were not alone in the universe. We met the Vethkai, and through them, We learned about the Galactic Concord. We were excited. We thought we had found something better out here among the stars. We thought we had found civilizations that had moved beyond violence, that had learned to cooperate instead of compete. His expression hardened slightly. We were wrong. The more we learned about the galaxy, the more we saw the same patterns we had left behind on Earth, the strong preying on the weak, empires built on conquest, species exterminated for their territory or their resources. He gestured broadly at the assembled representatives. We watched the Draxians conquer world after world. We watched them enslave species that had done nothing wrong except exist in space they wanted. And we asked ourselves, if we reveal our true strength, will we become like them? Will we become the monsters we were 200 years ago? The chamber was utterly silent. Even those who hated humanity were listening. So we made a choice, Christopher continued. We would try diplomacy first. We would smile and negotiate and make friends wherever we could. We would give peace every possible chance to work. But we would also prepare for the day when peace failed. Because we had learned on Earth that hoping for peace is not the same as guaranteeing it. He looked directly at Sorelveth. We did not deceive you out of malice, Ambassador. We deceived you because we were afraid. Not of you, but of ourselves. We knew what we would become if we let ourselves embrace war again. We knew the kind of destruction we were capable of. We hoped we would never have to prove it. But you did prove it, another voice called out. It was the Korvath Ambas. Sador, a massive being covered in bony plates. His species was known for their aggressive expansion. You destroyed the Draxian fleet in 11 minutes. You have demonstrated that you could do the same to any of us. How are we supposed to trust you now? Christopher turned to face him. You ask how you can trust us. Let me ask you something in return. The Korvath Empire has conquered 12 systems in the last 50 years. Your expansion plans target 6 more in the next decade. Those systems are inhabited by species who cannot defend themselves against your military. The Korvath ambassador shifted uncomfortably. That is our sovereign right. The strong survive. The weak serve, and that, Christopher said quietly, is exactly why we hid our true capabilities. Because we live in a galaxy where strength is used to justify cruelty, where species like the Draxians can blockade colonies and murder civilians and broadcast it as entertainment. His voice rose. The Draxians killed 47 of our people. They executed them in a public square and laughed while doing it. They thought they could do this because they believed we were weak. They thought there would be no consequences. He paused. Now they know differently. Now everyone knows differently. The chamber erupted in anxious murmuring. Species that had been planning aggression against weaker neighbors suddenly wondered if those neighbors might have hidden protectors. Species that had been victims of aggression wondered if humanity might protect them. Christopher waited for the noise to die down before continuing. I will tell you what we want, he said. We do not want to conquer the galaxy. We do not want to rule over other species or demand tribute or expand our territory through force. We want to live in a galaxy where what happened to our colonists cannot happen again. Where the weak are not automatically prey for the strong. Where diplomacy means something more than a delay before inevitable conquest. He spread his hands. We have the power to impose this vision by force. We could become the very thing we hate, the thing we nearly became 200 years ago. But that would make us no better than the Draxians. His voice softened. Instead, we offer something else. Partnership. Alliance. The chance to build something better together. We will use our strength to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We will help those who have been victimized by aggressive empires. But we will not become conquerors ourselves. Sorelveth spoke again, his voice thoughtful. And if we refuse your offer? If we see you as a threat to be contained, Christopher met his gaze steadily. Then you will have made an enemy of the one species in this galaxy that tried everything possible to avoid becoming enemies with anyone. You will have taught us that peace truly is impossible, that the galaxy will not accept anything except submission or domination. He paused. I hope you will not make that choice. I hope you will recognize that humanity's patience was not weakness, and that our mercy was a choice, not an inability. I hope you will see that we are offering you something rare, a powerful ally who does not want to rule you." The chamber fell silent again. Representatives looked at each other, communicating in ways both visible and invisible. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance of their deliberations. Christopher Blake stood alone on the speaker's platform, carrying the weight of his entire species on his shoulders. He had said everything he could say. Now all he could do was wait, and hope that enough beings in the galaxy would choose cooperation over fear. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Helios. The galaxy had changed in ways both visible and invisible, and the ripples of that 11-minute conflict continued to spread outward like waves from a stone dropped in still water. The Draxian hegemony had collapsed. Without their fleet, without their reputation for invincibility, their empire had crumbled from within. Subject species that had been held in bondage for centuries rose up against their masters. Draxian colonies that had ruled through fear found themselves surrounded by former victims who no longer feared them. Dr. Amanda Foster led humanitarian missions to worlds that had suffered under Draxian rule. She was a medical officer who had volunteered for relief work, and what she found on those worlds broke her heart and strengthened her resolve at the same time. On a world called Kareth, she treated survivors of a species called the Melarin. They were small beings, gentle by nature, who had been enslaved by the Draxians for 3 generations. Their children had never known freedom. Their elders remembered it only as a fading dream. When Amanda's team arrived with food and medicine, Melarin did not know how to react. They had been taught that other species only took from them, never gave. The concept of help without payment was alien to everything they had experienced. Amanda sat with their eldest leader, a frail being named Sevaloth, and explained that humanity wanted nothing in return. They were there to help because it was the right thing to do. Sevaloth looked at her with eyes that had seen too much suffering. "Why?" she asked through the translator. "Why would you do this?" "The Draxians told us that strength exists only to dominate, that the weak exist only to serve. Why would the strongest species in the galaxy serve us?" Amanda thought about the question for a long time. "Because we remember what it was like to be weak," she finally said. "And we remember what it was like to be cruel. We have been both, at different times in our history. We learn that cruelty diminishes the one who practices it, even when it seems to give them power." She gestured at the supplies being distributed by her team. "This is not charity. This is who we are trying to become. Every time we help instead of hurt, we prove to ourselves that we can be better than we once were." Sevaloth was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and touched Amanda's hand. A gesture of trust that meant everything coming from a being who had learned to trust nothing. "Perhaps," Sevaloth said, "you were the answer to prayers we stopped believing in long ago." While Amanda worked on the ground, Admiral Catherine Moore dealt with more complicated matters in space. She commanded the First Fleet from the bridge of the Vanguard, patrolling the shipping lanes and responding to distress calls. The galaxy was in flux, and not all the changes were positive. Several species had formed what they called the Defensive Pact, a coalition dedicated to developing countermeasures against human technology. They saw humanity as an existential threat that would eventually have to be confronted. Their spies tried to infiltrate human research facilities. Their scientists worked frantically to reverse engineer captured Draxian wreckage. Hoping to find some weakness, Commander Rachel Torres, Catherine's intelligence officer, presented a report on the Pact's activities during a staff meeting. "They are making progress," she admitted. "Slowly. Our best estimate is that they will need 20 to 30 years to develop weapons that could seriously threaten our fleet." Catherine nodded, her expression troubled. "And what happens in 20 or 30 years?" "Unknown, Admiral. It depends on how relations develop. Between now and then." Catherine stood and walked to the viewport. The stars stretched out before her, countless points of light representing futures yet unwritten. She thought about everything that had happened since she gave the order to authorize Prometheus. The victory, the liberation, the speech at the Concord, and the fear. Always the fear. The galaxy looked at humanity now and saw power beyond their ability to match. Some saw that power as a shield. Others saw it as a threat waiting to fall on them. We broke the old order, Catherine said quietly. The galaxy operated on principles of strength and predation because everyone assumed that was the only way. We showed them a different kind of strength. But we also scared them. Rachel moved to stand beside her. What alternative did we have, Admiral? Let the Draxians murder our people. Let the galaxy continue to believe that humanity was prey. No, we did what we had to do. But now we have to live with the consequences. Catherine turned to face her staff. The defensive pact is not wrong to be afraid of us. If we had been in their position, watching another species demonstrate overwhelming military superiority, we would have been afraid too. She returned to her command chair. We cannot undo what we did. We can only try to show the galaxy that our strength is not a threat to those who mean no harm. Every time we protect a convoy from pirates, every time we mediate a dispute without using force, every time we help a world recover from tyranny, we build trust. And if the pact attacks us in 20 years? Rachel asked. Catherine's expression hardened. Then we will defend ourselves. But we will not strike first. We will not become the monsters the galaxy fears we are. If war comes, it will not be because we sought it. On Earth, Secretary Marcus Cole addressed the United Earth Council about the path forward. The debate had been fierce. Some wanted to return to isolation, using human power simply to secure human space. Others wanted active engagement, reforming the galaxy according to human values. A vocal minority called for expansion, arguing that human principles should be spread throughout the stars by force, if necessary. Marcus argued for what he called the Guardian Doctrine. We cannot pretend this never happened, he said. The galaxy knows what we are now. Hiding will only breed more fear. Our only path is forward. Not as conquerors, but as something the galaxy has never seen. A power that could dominate but chooses not to. The Council voted to accept the doctrine. Human fleets would patrol major trade routes protecting merchant vessels. Human mediators would offer services in disputes. Human technology would be shared with species that demonstrated peaceful intentions. Ambassador. Christopher Blake returned to Nexus Prime with this proposal. The Grand Assembly listened as he outlined humanity's vision for the future. We do not want to rule the galaxy, he said. We want to live in a galaxy where diplomacy means something, where the weak have a voice, where strength is used to protect rather than oppress. He extended his hand in a gesture of friendship. We broke the old order. Now we ask, who will help us build something better? One by one, ambassadors stepped forward. Sorrel Veth of the Vethkai was first honoring the bond formed when their species first welcomed humanity to the stars. The Mellorin representative came next, speaking for all the species that had suffered under Draxian rule. The Selenari, a peaceful species that had long been victimized by aggressive neighbors. Dozens more followed. Not everyone joined. The defensive pact watched from the edges, suspicious and afraid. Some species left entirely retreating to their home systems to await whatever came next. But enough responded. Enough chose hope over fear. Enough believed that the galaxy could be something better than it had always been. Catherine Moore watched the proceedings from her flagship. Daniel Perry, now her executive officer, stood beside her. Do you think it will work? He asked. Catherine considered the question carefully. I do not know, she admitted. Humanity has spent its entire history swinging between creation and destruction, between our best impulses and our worst. We have given the galaxy the same choice now: build something together or destroy each other. She looked out at the stars, thinking about everything that had brought them to this moment. The execution she had witnessed, the authorization she had given, the power she had unleashed. If there is one thing our history has taught me, she said, it is that nothing is inevitable. Every moment is a choice. Every day, we decide who we want to be. I have to believe that enough beings across these stars will choose wisely. She turned from the viewport. Set course for Earth. We have work to do. The Vanguard's engines powered up, and the ship began its journey home. Behind it, the Grand Assembly continued its deliberations. Before it, the future waited, uncertain and full of possibility. Humanity had shown the galaxy what it was capable of. Now they would show the galaxy what they chose to be. The stars watched in silence, as they always had. And somewhere among them, beings of every shape and form looked toward Earth and wondered what would come next. They feared, they hoped, they waited, and humanity moved forward, carrying both the power to destroy and the determination to build into whatever future they would create together.